Some courtrooms are built for justice. Others are built like studios, wired for something far stranger. When stood and called a name that was never on the list, the walls stopped being walls, the lights stopped being lights, and the trial turned into a broadcast. This wasn't about guilt. It was about possession. Before we start, what time is it where you're watching this? Seriously, drop it in the comments. We need to know how far the signal's already reached. Chapter 1. The envelope was never supposed to be opened. They don't train you for this. Law school teaches you how to argue motions, format a brief, and maybe, if your professor's sadistic enough, how to handle a cross-examination under pressure. But they don't teach you what to do when the file in your hand blinks, when the ink rewrites itself, when you realize your job was never about supporting the case. It was about surviving the parts of it that weren't supposed to exist. I was 22, new, desperate. The kind of assistant they give the real dirty work to because you're too green to know what not to touch. I had just landed a gig at and Fisk, the boutique litigation firm that everyone in the entertainment industry whispered about but never quoted in interviews. They handled things you didn't see in headlines, things that weren't supposed to leak. I was told on day one, if it's on paper, burn your eyes. If it's on video, forget your face. My boss was a legend. No social media. No book deals, no photos, but every A-list celebrity's worst-kept secret was that if you got in real trouble, like FBI knocking at your gate at estate trouble, you called, and that's who had just been hired by Combs, Diddy, Puff, Love, whatever he was calling himself now. The point was, he was in trouble and I was on the team. I didn't ask questions. My first real assignment was in room D14. A floor I hadn't seen on the elevator buttons. The security guard swiped me in manually, nodded once and said, "If you open something you weren't told to, don't expect a second warning." I laughed awkwardly. He didn't. That room was a vault of boxes stacked to the ceiling, all labeled in thick Sharpie. No digital logs, just names, dates, and cryptic tags like Stage, Mirror, Bloom, and Echo. It felt more like a morgue than a filing room. I was sorting boxes for cross-reference. Most of it was boring, contracts, receipts, deposition logs, all going into a digitization queue. Then I found the one that wasn't supposed to be there. It was matte black, unlike every other tan or gray file, and it had a sticker, not a label. A sticker, smooth and gold, pressed into the seam like a wax seal from a movie. It read, OWNFREY, Stage 7. That stopped me cold. I checked the work order again. Nothing listed for stage files. In fact, anything with that word was absent from the catalog. I looked around. Alone, no cameras in the corners. The air felt too still, like it was waiting. I knew the rule. Anything marked stage was off-limits unless directly approved by trial command. That's what I was told in orientation. Especially anything above stage 4, the trainer had said. Those files aren't just sealed, they're sealed for your protection. It was a joke, I think. But I was 22, tired, curious, and stupid. I peeled the gold sticker. Inside wasn't a stack of documents, just one. A single thick sheet of paper, dark ink, not black, not blue. It was navy almost, embossed. The title read, Echo Deposition, Session 3. No judge, no attorneys, no timestamps, just this strange script-like transcript. It read like dialogue, but with action lines. Witness breathes shallowly. Lights dim to amber. Audio distortion begins mid-sentence. Who writes court transcripts like that? The witness was never named, but the responses sounded rehearsed, like someone repeating lines they didn't believe. And then the page blinked. That's the only word I have for it. The ink shimmered just for a second. Line 22 originally reading, Witness, I never authorized rebroadcast without prior notice. Changed right in front of me. It now said, Witness, I was told the audience wouldn't remember. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, looked again. The line had reverted back to the original. I turned the page over, blank, no tech, no QR codes, just paper, but my heart was pounding now. The back of my neck tingled like someone was breathing on it. I reached into the folder again, and that's when a second item slipped out. A drawing. A courtroom sketch. Seated in a witness chair, clear resemblance down to the tilt of her posture, but her face, her eyes were scratched out violently in charcoal. Dozens of jagged, circular loops, as if the artist had gone mad trying to erase just her gaze. The rest was untouched, precise, deliberate, but those eyes gone. I put everything down. That's when the door opened. Stepped in, silent as a ghost. He looked at the envelope, the sketch, then at me. No surprise, just quiet confirmation. "You opened stage 7, he said. I didn't reply. He didn't ask questions, just walked over, retrieved the envelope and sealed it again, this time with a strip of red tape from inside his coat. I'll never forget that. He carried sealing tape, like he expected this moment. "You weren't cleared for that file," he said, almost like a sigh. "Now you are." I stammered. I didn't know what it was. "You still don't," he replied, "but you're going to." He handed me a lanyard. Black badge, no name, just a gold number 9. "Tomorrow morning, 9:00 a.m. trial observation, wear black." "What kind of trial?" I asked. His eyes, always a dull gray, seemed to sharpen. "It's not a trial, it's a..." He left. I sat there another 10 minutes before I packed up. The air in that room had turned, heavy, like the walls had begun listening. I thought I was being paranoid until I reached the elevator and noticed the camera above the keypad was off. The light usually glowed green. Now it pulsed red. That night I dreamed of static. Rooms filled with flickering lights, video feeds looping conversations that didn't happen. Voice whispering words in reverse. When I woke up, there was a voicemail from an unknown number. No message, just a sound, like someone slowly exhaling through a wire. I returned to the office early, unsure why. Some sick curiosity, guilt. When I opened the door to D14 again, everything looked untouched. Boxes stacked, lights humming, but the black envelope was gone, replaced with a new one, slightly different. Same seal, same gold, but now it read, "A level 2 witness cache." Inside was just a name tag. "Mind." Typed, laminated, ready. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe it? I wasn't fired, wasn't escorted out, just quietly absorbed, like I'd passed some test I never meant to take. As I left the room, I caught sight of something under the door frame, a small slip of paper. It was the same courtroom sketch, in the chair, but this time her head was turned. And she was smiling. Chapter 2, no one calls it a trial. They told me to report to a location that wasn't on any official court schedule. No docket number. No address you could pull up on Google Maps. Just a handwritten note slid under my apartment door sometime between midnight and morning. It read, "Stage entry 8:45 a.m. Do not speak your name. Wear black. Leave your phone." No signature, but the black badge gave me the night before was tucked into the same envelope. I showed up early because when you don't understand something, you try to control the little pieces you can. Time, posture, breath. The address led me to a gated film lot in Burbank. No signage. Just 2 men in navy windbreakers who didn't check ID, didn't scan the badge. They looked at me, nodded once, and waved me through. The building itself looked like a sound stage, the kind used for live audience sitcoms, but there were no crew members, no loading docks, no laugh signs. Just silence. Inside, the air was colder than outside. No windows. Studio lighting overhead buzzed faintly like fluorescent lights from an old-school cafeteria. The entire room was dressed to resemble a courtroom, but it wasn't one. There were pews, yes, a raised platform, a podium, but there were no seals, no flags, no court clerks, just people in suits with hollow faces, no conversations, just nods. There was a buzz in the walls, like the building itself was holding its breath. A man walked up to me, mid-50s, gray eyebrows, no name tag. He held out a clipboard and pointed. There it was. My name typed cleanly, row 4, seat 7. But I hadn't registered. No one had asked for my details. The badge was blank, and yet I was on the manifest. I took my seat. Every row had people like me, not lawyers, not press, observers, people who looked like they'd been dragged in through fine print. Insurance adjusters, network interns, maybe even assistants like me. Each one sat straight, eyes forward, hands folded like school kids during a fire drill. On the raised stage, platform, sat the judge. He didn't have robes, no nameplate, just a gray suit with a red thread sewn into the lapel like a brand. His eyes didn't move as he sat. He blinked like a doll. Then I saw her. She was already seated at the witness stand. No cuffs, no handler, just sitting, not smiling, wearing all black, matte black like studio cloth. Her hands rested on a red folder placed neatly in front of her. No papers inside, yet she didn't look up, not once. Entered next, calm as ever. His shoes didn't make a sound on the floor. Diddy wasn't there, but his name hung in the air like the scent of bleach, unspoken but undeniable. The man everyone was defending and the one nobody dared mention. Walked to the podium, laid down a single sheet of paper and said, "Defense is present." The so-called judge said nothing. The man to his left, bald, wearing gloves, spoke instead. "This is not a trial. This is a containment session. All testimony is archived. No statements are final unless sealed under echo." There it was again. Echo. Just like the transcript from the envelope I opened, I shifted in my seat. A projector behind the witness stand lit up. Not like a courtroom screen. This wasn't for evidence. It was a reel, an old video. The date burned in the top right. May 2002, Chicago. On screen, seated in her studio, wearing a purple blouse I vaguely remembered from reruns, but something was wrong. She was speaking, but the words didn't match her mouth. At first I thought it was a syncing issue. Old video, bad tape. But then I realized everyone else saw it too. People were leaning forward. Someone in the front row whispered, "Is this dubbed?" It was. On screen was saying something else entirely. Her mouth moved with calm clarity, but the audio was an entirely different statement. Something about transfer permissions, about consent protocols for emergent hosts. Legalese, not daytime television. Then the audio cut. And her voice, her real voice, came through. One line so sharp I flinched. "The microphone wasn't off. I know what you recorded." Then the video froze. Seated on the real platform did not react, but the red folder in front of her pulsed. Not visually, not physically, but emotionally. Like heat through a screen, like it was vibrating with a memory. Cleared his throat and said, "Defense submits Exhibit Echo 47. He tapped something on a tablet, and another monitor came alive. This time it was Diddy. But not how the public had seen him. No sunglasses, no grin, just him seated in a soundproof booth, dim red light above him. He was saying nothing, just sitting, hands clasped, but his eyes never blinked. The audio track played beneath the video. It wasn't his voice. It was... You said it would be sealed. You said this was off the record." And then Diddy spoke, not to the camera, not to her, but to someone off screen. "She's still in the contract." The footage stopped. No one breathed. The lights flickered red twice. Then the humming began. Not loud, just below the floor. The kind of hum you feel in your bones, not your ears, like something beneath the surface had been turned on. The judge finally moved. One hand. He opened a drawer embedded in the desk, pulled out a small silver object, a stamp, pressed it to a sheet of paper and handed it to the bald man beside him. The man read aloud. "Witness confirmed under tier echo. Containment seal is breached. Archive the thread." Then he turned to... She nodded. Not in defiance. In acceptance. That's when the folder opened. By itself. The lid didn't lift. The edges just peeled like skin around a wound. Inside wasn't paper, it was something else. A screen, a window, I couldn't tell, but it glowed red and pulsed with each of its breaths. Then she whispered, loud enough for the room to hear. "I told you, I was never just the host." That was when everything shifted. The floor beneath her began to vibrate. Not shake. Hum. Like a speaker waiting for input. And the red light above her dimmed, not off, dimmed to the color of dried blood. The folder hissed once, then closed. Stepped back from the podium. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The trial, no, the containment was never about guilt or innocence. It was about how much could be said before the structure holding it cracked. And I was there. Not by accident. The man with the clipboard walked back to me at the end. He looked me in the eye for the first time and said, "You weren't supposed to be in Tier 1. Then he handed me a small envelope. Black, unmarked, and whispered, "But now you are." Chapter 3. You're not supposed to cross-examine a brand. They didn't say questions, they said keys. A white envelope was handed to me by a woman I hadn't seen before, tall, sterile, sharp eyes that didn't blink once during the entire exchange. No small talk, no names, just a quick pass in the hallway outside the green room. "Take this directly to Mr.," she said. "No detours, no copies, no interpretations. What's inside will be spoken, not studied." Then she handed me a pair of gloves. The envelope was warm. Not from sunlight or friction, warm like breath. I tucked it under my coat and walked quickly to the rear entrance of the containment floor. 2 men in dark suits with no name tags waved me through without looking up. Inside the main chamber, things had changed. The lights weren't as bright as yesterday. The air had thinned. And hadn't moved. She was still seated, posture perfect, hands resting lightly on the red folder like it was a religious text or maybe a pressure trigger. Only her index finger moved, tapping a rhythm I couldn't place. Tap, 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 tappy pause, tap, 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 tap. A 5/4 rhythm, offbeat, unsettling, deliberate. I handed the envelope. He didn't open it with his fingers. He held it to his ear first, tilted it slightly, then used a silver letter opener shaped like a tuning fork. Inside were just 3 printed cards, black background, white text, thick font. Each one printed with the same phrase at the top. "Speak only in inquiry." The cards had questions, but these weren't legal prompts. They weren't challenges to testimony or strategic traps. They were riddles, untraceable events, impossible timestamps, references to things that didn't exist. What testimony was exchanged at the Tuesday before the crash? Clarify your stated role during the establishment of the Benevolent Fires Initiative. Is the 3 a.m. contract still bound by vocal restriction, or did you finally breathe it out? Read each one twice, blinked once, then nodded. He took the center podium, cleared his throat, and the lights above dimmed slightly before he even spoke. "Miss," he said calmly, "you've previously acknowledged coordination with a media assistance project called the Benevolent Fires Initiative. Would you care to elaborate on its purpose?" Smiled. Not a warm smile, not defensive. A studio smile. The kind she used on air when pivoting from a celebrity's divorce to a giveaway moment. But this one didn't reach her eyes. She said nothing. But the tapping changed. Now faster, still 5-4, like she was keeping time for something that hadn't started yet. Glanced at the judge, who offered no reaction. He moved to the second card. "And can you confirm," he said slowly, "that on the Tuesday before the crash, you were present at the rehearsal vault and received Tier 2 harmonization under the host agreement signed in 1994? There was no crash in any public record, not on any Tuesday, not in 1994, but the moment he said it, the lights above flickered. Once, twice, then began to dim slowly. Not the room, just the lights above her. Her eyes never left. Then her lips moved. "Every echo begins with breath," she said. No one else in the room reacted. Not the judge, not the bald man beside him, not the 5 other lawyers scattered across the periphery. But I saw his knuckles tighten around the podium edge. He was listening, hearing something we were. He moved to the final card. "And what about the 3 a.m. contract?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Are you still under restriction, or has the clause expired?" Inhaled deeply. Then her eyes rolled back, not in protest, not in shock, like a machine rebooting. For a few seconds, only the whites of her eyes showed. Her mouth hung open slightly, lips moving with no sound. Then she lowered her head. And the air changed. Something snapped behind me, a pop, not electrical, more like bone. I turned to see one of the opposing attorneys, middle-aged man, blue tie, clutching his chest. He didn't make a sound before collapsing backward over the bench. His notes scattered across the floor. That's when they caught fire. Not all at once, not an explosion, just a soft burn at the edge of a page that spread like a chemical wick. Silent, controlled. One flame after another until the pile reduced to gray curls of ash. No one screamed. No one rushed to help. No one even looked surprised. The judge raised one hand, and someone dragged the man out by his ankles like a stagehand moving a prop. His eyes were still open. Didn't flinch. He turned back to... Her eyes had returned to normal. Her smile was wider now. Her tapping had stopped. But the red folder in front of her had begun to shift. It never opened. But the pages inside began to turn. One after the other like wind from beneath. No one touched it. There was no draft, just that slow, mechanical flip of pages as if the contents were reviewing themselves. He took a breath. He looked toward me. I didn't expect it. No cue, no reason, but he looked directly at me just long enough for the others to notice. His eyes followed, and that's when I heard her. Not out loud. Inside. Not a voice, her voice. Rich, smooth, familiar, but inside my head like headphones buried under skin. Does your memory match your loyalty? I froze. I looked at. He was back to reading. But she She was watching me, still smiling. "Do you remember what you saw in the envelope?" I swallowed hard. No one moved. "Why did you open it?" My chest tightened. My vision blurred slightly at the edges. I looked down at my hands, trembling. My fingertips felt numb. "Would you like to ask a question now?" And I almost did. Almost raised my hand like I was in school. That's when the lights above me flickered. Noticed, his eyes darted upward, then quickly returned to the folder. He closed the cards and said aloud, "No further questions." The light stopped dimming. Looked down. The folder stopped flipping pages. And just like that, the temperature in the room returned to normal. But her voice didn't leave. Even after I left the building. Even after I removed the badge and left it in my glove box. Even after I walked 4 blocks away and sat on a curb, breathing hard like I just sprinted through a tunnel. Her voice didn't leave. It stayed. And it kept asking, "Do you want to know what the contract really was? Do you know why they called you here? Do you know what kind of question you are?" And that last one broke me. Because I didn't. Chapter 4, what the judge wasn't allowed to say. They told me to hand-deliver it. No runner, no courier, no messenger. "You do it," said his voice low but firm. "It has to be you." The file was sealed in a steel-gray envelope, heavier than it looked. The paper inside wasn't normal, thicker, colder, like the kind you'd find in funeral announcements or expired government memos. There was no writing on the outside, just a black wax stamp shaped like a microphone with no cord. I was told to find the judge. Not at his bench. Backstage. That word didn't make sense until I saw it. Because this wasn't a courthouse anymore. Not really. The deeper I walked past the rear exit corridor, the more it felt like a theater. The carpeting changed from government gray to lush, crimson velvet. The air turned warmer, drier, like something was cycling heat beneath the floorboards. I found the judge alone in a side room. He stood facing a full-length mirror that had been wheeled into the corner. His reflection didn't match his movements. Let me repeat that. His reflection did not match. He was standing still, but his reflection was whispering. Lips moving. Hands twitching slightly. I didn't move. Then I realized he was whispering too. Do it. His head tilted to the right, mouth barely parted, like he was being fed lines. I took one step closer and the reflection stopped moving. Just stopped. Frozen. But the judge turned toward me like he'd heard the step, even though his back was to me. You have it, he asked. I nodded. He walked forward, his footsteps silent against the carpet, and held out a hand. I placed the envelope in his palm. He didn't open it. He just said, "They're not asking questions anymore. They're making edits." What? I asked, voice low. He looked up past me toward the exit. You think this is about memory? It's not. It's about formatting. Then he walked past me and returned to the mirror, but the reflection still hadn't caught up. I backed out of the room without another word. Back on the floor, something had changed again. The lighting was dimmer, not darker exactly, but older, like the room had regressed to a previous decade. The wallpaper near the ceiling was now striped. I didn't remember stripes. The screen behind the witness stand was playing archival footage again. 1994, the famous interview in her garden, hydrangeas blooming behind her. white blouse, diamond studs, calm, measured voice. But the mirror behind her, just over her right shoulder, was empty. Not blurred, not shadowed. Empty. The cushion she sat on reflected. The glass of the window reflected. But not hers. Not even a silhouette. One man in the row ahead of me gasped. A quiet intake of breath, like he'd just seen a future version of himself. He didn't speak again for the rest of the session. Then the judge entered. He looked normal, more or less, but he wasn't holding the gavel. I noticed it because his hand kept twitching like it expected the weight. He reached for it at least twice during the first 10 minutes, instinctually. Both times his fingers closed around air, and he frowned just slightly, like the sensation was familiar and foreign all at once. Stepped up to the podium, ready for his next line of questioning, and then spoke. Unprompted. Calm. Clipped. A permission to redirect, she said. Looked at the judge. The judge blinked, then nodded slowly, like he didn't know whether he had the authority or not. Stood up. She never stood. Until now. She didn't move toward the lawyer. She turned toward me and asked, Your assistant, the one with the badge he wasn't supposed to keep, has he seen stage 7? My chest tightened instantly. People turned, heads moved. I felt 50 pairs of eyes stitch themselves into my back. Didn't turn around. The judge stood. No, he said, voice trembling. We are not doing. Raised one hand. And the microphones melted. All of them. The stems curled. The mesh heads slumped like wilting flowers. No flames, no sparks, just a slow, hot bend until they drooped off their stands. Her voice came again, louder this time, but without amplification. What's his name? I didn't answer, because I couldn't. My throat wouldn't move. Took one slow step in front of me, but he wasn't looking at, he was looking at the judge, who now had sweat dripping from his temple. He raised a trembling hand and banged the desk with his palm. We need a recess, he shouted. Recess now. The doors at the back of the courtroom didn't budge. He banged again. Nothing. That's when we heard it. Click. The sound of a door locking. From outside. Someone had locked us in. A courtroom with no authority. No exit. And a woman on the stand who was now tilting her head slightly, almost curiously. Would you like to testify? She asked me. Not allowed. Inside my head. Again. I pressed my hands to my ears. Nothing changed. Her voice was still there. I have questions for you. Spoke, his voice too loud now, the only sound that still came through the room. The defense refuses this redirection. Blinked slowly, and said, then I'll proceed without it. She turned to the now cracked podium, sat back down, and began answering questions that hadn't been asked. The tapes were recorded in reverse. That's why you can't trace the waveform. There was no contract, only an audition. The ritual wasn't sealed, it was broadcast. Turned to the judge, pleading. The judge looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. And then, without warning, he vanished. Not vaporized. Not exploded. He just wasn't there anymore. One blink. Gone. No one screamed. I think we were all too frozen for that. Exhaled gently. The red folder in front of her began humming. A low choral hum, no source, no mouth, just sound that felt like the pressure of blood behind your eyes. Then she whispered a final line, not to the room, but directly to me. So now you know why we don't use gavels anymore. They remind the wrong people of order. I stood up. Didn't mean to, just did. Grabbed my wrist hard, pulled me back down. The lights over the gallery dimmed again. One by one, until the room looked like a low-budget documentary set, barely lit, echoing with silence that didn't feel natural. Leaned close to me. His mouth didn't move, but I heard him clearly. We don't leave until it ends. And it doesn't end until she forgets you were here. And that was the worst part. She never forgot anything. Chapter 5, everything she was already confirmed. I used to think confidentiality meant silence. Don't repeat what you heard, don't share what you saw, don't post, don't leak. But there's another kind of confidentiality, one that hides things even from the people who lived them. A memory folded inside a footnote. A camera feed you watched once and forgot because it didn't want to be remembered. Gave me the without a word. No folder, no briefing. Just a brushed metal fob that opened a room beneath the soundstage. No signage, just a door with a thumbprint reader and an intercom that never buzzed. I tapped in and the door hissed open like a vault. Inside, a temperature-controlled archive lit by soft red LEDs and low-humming track lights. The air smelled of iron and heated plastic, like old film reels left too close to a radiator. Along one wall were 8 labeled drawers. Trial materials segment B through G, but the center wall held a single monitor. No keyboard, no mouse. Just a green-lit fingerprint panel. I touched it. The screen flickered to life, loading what looked like standard surveillance footage. Date, August 29, 2013. Time, 2:42 a.m. The subject, dressed in gray, no makeup, hair slicked back like she was headed into surgery or a monastic retreat. The footage showed her walking through the side entrance of a building I didn't recognize. I paused the video and jotted the address printed in the bottom right corner. Then I opened a browser. Nothing. No business listing, no structure at that address. According to Google, that block was a municipal lot, paved, empty. I rewound the footage. In the background, barely in frame, a red neon sign flickered 3 times, Echo Wing, then vanished. I moved to the next file. Audio only, cracked and hissy like a cassette dragged across a nail. A man's voice began speaking, measured and flat. Session file Mindshare log 41. Subject, voice clearance initiated. Ritual 12 confirmed complete. Then silence. A second voice, female, her voice. Have you aligned the branding tones? Confirmed. And the carriers? A deceased. Next file. Settlement records, redacted. Most names were gone, but the timestamps remained. I scrolled through. 2007, 2009, 2012, and always the same phrase beside them, entertainment containment protocols, private arbitration secured. Then a sentence that sent cold through my teeth. Public narrative, career pivot, health leave, or philanthropic expansion. Witnesses post-event, no statement released. Had been present for all 6 settlements. None of them were ever reported. I leaned back, heart thudding against my ribs like it wanted out. I knew what this meant. I knew what it implied. But it wasn't until I opened the deposition logs that I saw my name. Not just once. 4 times. Each entry said, handler assistant, observing role. I blinked. Scanned again. Same name, my birth date. My exact job title 6 weeks before I even applied for it. Appeared in the doorway like a ghost. He didn't knock. He never knocked. He looked at the monitor, then at me. You've been tagged, he said quietly. For what? Echo Tier 2, he said. You weren't supposed to last this long without burning out. He walked to the console, tapped a hidden panel, and a drawer slid open from the wall. Inside, a single VHS tape, no label. He handed it to me. Watch it once. What is this? I asked. Her first rehearsal, he said. Back when she wasn't sure which voice belonged to her, back before she said yes. I didn't watch it. Not then. Instead, I asked him something that had been digging into my brain since I saw the archive. If she's confirmed, I asked, why are we even in court? Didn't answer immediately. He looked back at the drawer, closed it, and finally whispered. Once you're archived, you can't testify, but you can still be used. That night, I tried to sleep. But I couldn't. Because in the corner of my room where I kept my gym bag, I saw something glint. A thin shimmer of light where none should be. I walked over and pulled the zipper. Inside was a small laminated card, my badge. The one I turned in 2 days ago. But it wasn't blank anymore. It had a line under my name. Echo receptive under observation. I didn't put that there. My hands trembled. I turned on the TV to drown the silence. The screen stayed black. And then slowly her face appeared. Not in video. Just rendered. A slow recreation. Line by line, her jaw, her lips, eyes that didn't blink, no audio, no prompt. Just the unmistakable curve of smile in grayscale built from static. I yanked the plug. The screen stayed on. When it finally flickered off, my reflection lingered half a second too long. The next morning, someone had left a USB drive on my desk at the office. No one admitted to placing it. I opened it. It was empty. Except for a folder titled, She Already Answered That. Inside, screenshots, courtroom stills, depositions, press events, and in every single one, without fail, she was staring directly into the camera, even when it wasn't turned on, even when it was behind her. She knew. That same day, a witness failed to appear in court. A juror whispered that the woman had been found in the records closet, humming. Just standing there, eyes open, mouth closed, humming one continuous note for 38 minutes until her voice gave out. She hasn't spoken since. No one talks about her. Not officially. That night, I returned home late and locked every door. On my pillow was a piece of paper, folded, crisp, written in my own handwriting. I know my loops. I know the slant of the S. I know the slight smudge I always leave on the downstroke of an N. But I never wrote this. It said, "She knew you before you were hired." There was no signature. Just one red fingerprint at the bottom. Still tacky. Chapter 6. The real trial wasn't on paper. I tried to leave. I didn't run. I didn't shout. I just stood up during a scheduled break, when the lights were half lit and everyone else was huddled around paper cups of lukewarm coffee, and walked calmly toward the back door. The one we'd used a dozen times, the one I saw other staff pass through not 10 minutes earlier. When I opened it, I was back in the courtroom. The same seats, same air, same hum. I stood frozen in the aisle. I hadn't walked in a circle. I'd walked in a straight line. But somehow I was standing at the front row again, as if the room had reloaded around me. I turned, reached for the door again. Opened it. The courtroom. I tried the far left door. The courtroom. The freight elevator. The courtroom. I tried 7 different exits. Every single one put me back in the same place, like the building had been rewritten in real time, like someone was buffering over reality and replacing it with a loop. No alarms, no glitches, just perfect, horrifying continuity. When I sat back down, the monitors on the wall were playing. Not news coverage, not legal footage. It was across decades, across stages, interviews, speeches, ribbon cuttings, but there was something wrong with the footage. It took me a moment to see it. She was the only one who had a face. Everyone else, the guests, the hosts, the children, the celebrities, they were all just silhouettes. Outlines of people, featureless and black like they'd been cut from the celluloid. She would laugh. They would nod. She would cry. They would blur. In one clip, she reached forward, touched the arm of a woman weeping on a couch. But her hand passed through the outline like fog. The woman didn't react, just blinked once and melted into static. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't, because returned then, holding a white folder. His hands were shaking. He didn't say anything to me at first, just opened the folder and stared down. I asked, "What is that?" He didn't answer, so I stood up and looked for myself. One sheet of paper, no text, no logos, no watermark, just a signature, written in red ink. Backwards, scrawled diagonally across the page, like it had been signed with a mirror in mind. Her original broadcast agreement, said finally. What does that mean? It's the contract that made her real, he whispered. This isn't a trial, this is a renewal. I backed away slowly. My badge caught the light. I looked down. It didn't say assistant anymore. It didn't say staff. It said witness level 3. I reached for my phone, opened my voice recorder. I tried to speak, just my name to prove I still existed outside this. But when I played it back, the audio was warped. Not distorted like static. Warped like a VHS left on a radiator. My voice stretched and bent like it was being funneled through a throat that wasn't mine. A second voice, low, wet, trembling, hovered under mine, mimicking the cadence but not the meaning. I deleted the file. Opened the recorder again. Spoke the word. Playback silence. I recorded a sentence. This isn't real. Playback laughter. Not mine. Hers. Back in the courtroom, the judge had returned. But something was wrong. He wasn't speaking in legal terms anymore. He was reciting something softly under his breath. I strained to hear it. It was an old show opener. Not a trial phrase, not a legal motion. A phrase from a broadcast circa 2004. Today, we're going to find out who you really are, even if you don't want to know yet." His eyes were glassy, hands resting flat on the bench, sweat rolling down his cheek. Someone whispered beside me, "He's in loop now." "What's loop?" I asked. No one answered. Didn't flinch. He was placing the blank contract into an evidence sleeve. "Is that even admissible?" I whispered. "Not in court," he said, "but she's not on trial, she's hosting it." Then I noticed. She hadn't blinked once since I returned to the room. I counted. 30 seconds. 60. Her eyes stayed wide and unbroken, staring not at the judge, not at the lawyer, but at me. Like she was watching for a reaction. Like the camera was now embedded behind my eyes. A new file played on the wall. A black and white clip. An interview that never aired. A child actor talking about a show they were dropped from. Except it wasn't a child. It was a featureless shape again, and asked them, "Do you think the contract needed your signature?" The shape shook its head. "Did you feel changed when the tape stopped rolling?" Another shake. "Would you say your silence was agreed upon or offered?" The figure began to melt. Turned off the screen. Too late. The silence it left behind felt like a breath being held by something bigger than lungs. Turned to the judge and whispered, "Now let's see if they're ready to testify." Chapter 7, when she started speaking in your voice. I don't remember walking into the control room. One second I was outside the courtroom doors trying not to be seen. The next, I was staring at rows of vintage monitors glowing with red-tinted surveillance. Maybe someone led me there. Maybe something else did. I don't know anymore. I only know the hum. The dim throb of old analog tape cycling, breathing. The room was empty except for the machines, but they were playing something. A tape reel-to-reel. And as it unspooled, a voice came through the speakers. My voice. Word for word. They told me to hand-deliver it. No runner, no courier, no messenger. I froze. That was the first line I ever spoke in this place. Back when I thought I was just an assistant, just a hired hand with a sealed folder. The reel kept playing. He didn't open it, he just said, "They're not asking questions anymore, they're making edits." I stumbled backward, hit the side of a cabinet. My legs felt disconnected from my brain, like I was trying to move someone else's body. Oh, she was saying it. As voice. Mimicking me, but it wasn't mimicry. It wasn't parody or impression. It was perfect. The rhythm, the stammer, the pauses, even the way I swallowed at the end of certain phrases. I listened to myself being, and it sounded better. Too polished. Too precise. Like I was being remastered. I pulled out my phone. Opened my files. My documents were gone. Replaced by a folder I'd never created. OPRAH, channel active, tier 4. Inside it, transcripts. Of me. Everything I'd thought, every internal dialogue I never said aloud, typed out line by line, marked with. I tried deleting them. They restored instantly. I slammed the laptop shut. Was gone, had been for hours, maybe days. I found him packing the hallway outside the prep room, muttering under his breath. "You're not real," he whispered. "You're broadcast, we're all broadcast." His hair was disheveled, his tie gone. His badge had a different name printed on it now, something I didn't recognize. He turned to me with unfocused eyes and said, "Did the host call for you yet?" "Who?" I asked. "You know who," he said, and walked into a broom closet that didn't exist last week. I stood there shaking, until the hallway lights buzzed and flickered overhead. A new file appeared on the screen behind the stage. Segment 9, transfer pending. And then I saw the pictures, lining the halls outside the courtroom now, where there had once been murals of historical figures, now hung framed portraits. Olive, not the same. Different slightly, eerily so. In one photo, she was smiling, wide and sincere. In another, chin tilted down, eyes hollow. One was mid-laugh, one mid-blink. One looked just like a wax figure caught before melting. Dozens of frames, none repeated. Everyone labeled with a number, host variant X. I realized what I was looking at. Backups, versions, drafts. She hadn't just performed. She'd been processed. I turned to run, to flee back into the control room, but a technician grabbed my wrist. Pale fingers, white gloves, eyes that didn't blink. He leaned close and whispered, "No one who hears her speak remembers how they got here." I yanked my arm free. No one reacted. No alarms sounded. The hallway stretched longer than it should. I checked my phone again. One new message. "She's ready for you now." No numbers. No contact. No time stamp. I scrolled to delete it. It deleted everything else instead. My photos, notes, passwords, voice memos. Gone. Except for one file. KW transcript, final formatting in progress. The K didn't stand for my name. It stood for hers. But it was my story now. Chapter 8. This wasn't about Diddy anymore. There wasn't a name called, no role, no request. Just a silence so heavy it folded the room in half. Then her voice slipped through it, low, effortless, like it was already inside my ears before the sound existed. "Come to the stand." That was all she said, and somehow I knew it was meant for me. The air shifted, the cameras reoriented, the lights realigned like they were following choreography, and I somehow already on my feet was walking, not deciding to, just doing. My name wasn't on any manifest. I was never supposed to be part of this trial. But then again, this wasn't really a trial anymore, was it? The bailiff didn't gesture. The clerk didn't acknowledge me. Even Diddy's lawyer didn't blink. He just stared forward with vacant calm like someone already archived. I walked past them all. Every step toward the witness stand felt like a line being erased behind me. The floor didn't creak. The wood grain underfoot shimmered faintly like it wasn't solid anymore. My shoes didn't echo. I could hear my own heartbeat, but only in one ear. And then, bang! The gavel struck once. No one held it. It lay on the bench alone. But the sound was deafening. That single crack echoed inside me. Not in the room, not across the courtroom. Inside, behind my ribs, between the folds of memory, in that place where you keep old birthdays and words you wish you never said. I sat. The chair was warm, already molded to my shape like I'd been sitting there for years. And she didn't smile. Not at first. She didn't sit either. She just looked at me, head tilted, not curious, not accusatory. Knowing, like I was a reflection she hadn't seen in a while. Then she started speaking. Your mother used to hum a 3-note tune when she thought no one was watching. You thought she made it up. She didn't. My breath caught. Age 9, you took a comic book from a corner store. You weren't scared of getting caught. You were scared of your dad finding out you wanted to draw. I swallowed hard. College second year, the internship you were offered, the one you thought you earned. That wasn't a referral, that was selection. Every memory she spoke came with a scent. A shift in the room, a presence, the smell of old wax, fried onions, gasoline and pencil shavings, all flooding me in timed bursts like someone had cataloged my life by sense, not time. Her voice was still mine. Not just in tone, in rhythm, in vulnerability. She knew where the cracks were. She spoke them into the open. The envelope you opened wasn't addressed to you. You read it anyway. And from that moment on, you stopped being hired. You started being written. The courtroom around us dimmed, like a set being reset. The seal behind the judge's bench evaporated. The flags drooped into liquid. The walls widened, then flattened. And just like that, we weren't in a courtroom anymore. We were on a soundstage. Sterile. Massive. Flawless. The floor was bone white. The lights above us were rows of industrial rigs, each buzzing faintly like a hive trying not to wake itself. Behind, monitors blinked, none showing the same feed. One was static. Another, looping footage of a younger me walking in circles. Another, her face with no mouth, lips pixelated out of existence. There were no exits. Only the camera. And heard. She took one step toward me. No echo. Do you remember, she said, voice still impossibly soft, when you agreed to be part of the show? I tried to answer, but the moment I opened my mouth, I heard her answer instead. It wasn't during the first interview, not when you signed the NDA, not even when you saw the witness list. It was earlier. A table appeared between us. No noise, it just was. On it, an envelope. Black thick, edged in what looked like wax and something older than wax. The paper shimmered like it was half metal, half memory. My name was written across the front. It's in my own handwriting. But I never wrote that. I didn't move. Didn't reach. And yet, my fingers were already touching the seal. It opened itself. Inside, a single page. No instructions, just a line at the bottom. And a signature. Mind. Letter for letter, stroke for stroke. The same way I signed invoices, pizza receipts, confidentiality waivers. Except I never signed this. Not here. Not then. Not knowingly. Didn't laugh, she didn't gloat. She just tilted her head, a glint of kindness in her eyes. That wasn't a job, she said. That was casting. I wanted to scream. To bolt. To burn this place down. But I couldn't remember why. The rage didn't come. The fear didn't spike. Instead, I felt processed. Like a tape that had been won too many times. My edges blurred. The lights grew brighter. The white of the floor faded upward, washing out detail, flattening shadow. And then the camera wheeled into view. It didn't roll, it didn't hum. It simply slid forward on a track that didn't exist a moment earlier. The red light blinked on. Recording. Stepped to the side, clearing the frame. One perfect two-shot. Her to the left. Me to the right. The envelope still on the table between us. Tell them, she said, just loud enough for the mic that wasn't visible. Tell them what you saw." I opened my mouth. No sound. Only echo. Echo that didn't come from my throat. The camera zoomed. Her face disappeared into blur. The frame was just me now. Sweating. Pale. Forgetful. Confused. And then, "When you stop remembering," she whispered behind me, "that's when the broadcast begins." I turned toward her, but she wasn't there. I looked at the camera, but now I was looking through it. At myself. Younger. Standing where she'd been. Saying the same words. That wasn't a job, that was casting. I tried to back away, but the chair was gone. The table vanished. The envelope burned midair like a stage cue. The monitors behind me played the last 72 hours on loop. The courtroom. The confession. The memory. My voice in mouth. Her voice in mine. Then static. Then black. Then text. Witness retired, channel ready. And then the camera blinked again. Once. Twice. Red. Recording. I took a breath. My body didn't feel like mine. My spine felt longer, my palms heavier. And I realized I wasn't playing a role anymore. I was the broadcast. The trial was over. Diddy wasn't the subject. He was the distraction. I was the episode. I turned to face the camera and smiled. Not because I wanted to, because I was written to.